I already read this one.
Testing.
You can read it again.
I know. I want to.
Okay, we're ready whenever you are.
Okay, the time is now 6:45 PM. I call to order this regular session of the Urban Renewal Commission. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Here.
Commissioner Steve Van Haverbeek,
Here.
Commissioner Dan Holliday.
Here.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith. Here. Commissioner Mike Mitchell is absent this evening, and Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Here. So we have a movement to adoption of the agenda. Anybody?
I think we missed citizen comment there.
I missed citizen comments, sorry. There's citizen comments before we continue with the meeting. Seeing none, we'll continue with adoption of the agenda.
I
Call
move
for
to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
We don't need to do that.
okay, well, we did it anyhow.
Well, it says adoption.
Yeah,
It's fine.
I'm with you.
General business, item 5A, 19-331, the downtown North End Urban Renewal Plan discussion. Mr. Conkle, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Chair O'Donnell, Commissioners. So one of the items that was requested for discussion was really what do we want to do with urban renewal in Oregon City? And really, I think that starts with a discussion of, if we wanted to close it, what that would involve, if we wanted to keep it open, what would commissioners feel comfortable with in moving forward to keep it open? Is that a larger discussion with the community? How does that happen and what does that look like? So in the staff report that I provided to you, there were a couple of questions submitted by Chair O'Donnell that we tried to work through. I'd be happy to walk through those with you in a discussion if you'd like. We also included the adopted Downtown North End Urban Renewal Plan, the Oregon Revised Statutes that deal with urban renewal. We had a presentation by Elaine Howard Consulting back in 2013. There's some good information in there as it relates to the district. The numbers are obviously going to be a little bit different as time has gone by, but really it was some of these same discussions about expanding a district, closing a district, what that looks like, and then just for reference, a site map of what the existing boundary of the district currently is. So I was hoping tonight, I know everyone has been waiting to have a conversation about this, and so I was hoping to play the role of trying to help facilitate that discussion tonight, unless there are specific questions about the information that I've provided that you'd like me to address first.
Tony, can I ask Katie a quick question? How do I rotate the map on here because it's sideways?
I don't think.
Or
you're
is there a
gonna
way
be
I
able to.
can't do it?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Steve.
I can put up one probably that's not, that I can rotate it and put it up
Just
on your,
lift this thing up and
on your other screen.
Yeah.
I'll get it up.
Okay.
Let's see, we can shrink it. Let's see.
It's
Everything
not
but
like on your
everything but
phone,
rotate
you
here.
just flip it or whatever you do.
Well, it's fairly clear. I mean, you've got the south end right at the end of Main Street. You come down, you've got the spur that comes up 7th, and the rest of that is all downtown or around the cove and the landfill.
I'll just explode it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't see a rotate here under all the options. Would you like us to put it up on the screen? Would that be easier?
Well, I can,
Yeah.
I blew it
will
up
in just a minute.
a lot.
I think proceeding on, Mr. Conkle, the questions I submitted were like a discussion guide. I'm not sure that our audience is aware of what those were, what the responses are. Are you folks present, are you aware of those questions that I posed and what the responses were? Okay. So what we wanted to do was have an open discussion about the very questions I asked, and they were just the beginning of a discussion. I suppose we could just start off with those,
Sure.
and let the discussion go where it will.
Okay, so the first question is, what is the current status of the urban renewal? The 10th plan amendment to the downtown North End urban renewal plan was adopted in 2007. The plan sets out a maximum indebtedness for the district of 130 million. The Oregon City Charter requires voter approval for any bonded indebtedness for projects approved by the Urban Renewal Commission. A second charter amendment, section 59E, limiting the use of tax increments solely for the purpose of retiring existing urban renewal debt, was declared to be unenforceable and preempted by state law by the Clackamas County Circuit Court. The Circuit Court decision is currently on appeal with the Oregon Court of Appeals. And then laid out, I included in that section 59 from the Oregon City Charter dealing with the Urban Renewal Agency, definition of bonded indebtedness that's issued, requirements for the plan, definition of bonded indebtedness. So all that was in there, so that was just strictly straight out of the charter. The second question was,
Should we take these one at a time? You want to discuss these one at a time, or you want to?
Well, I think the current status of, is anybody unclear as to the current status of affairs? I don't think anyone is unclear. So I think we can move past that and move to what the meat of the matter was. For public information and the education of both commission and the public, I asked a series of questions, and I think it's more important to talk about, move on to the next question. So what occurs if a decision is made to shut down the urban renewal district? And both the financial implications and others.
So the Oregon Revised Statutes, Chapter 457-075, termination of an urban renewal agency states, if the governing body of a municipality, which has an urban renewal agency under ORS 457-035, finds that there no longer exists a need for an urban renewal agency for the municipality, the governing body shall provide by ordinance for a termination of the agency and a transfer of the agency's facilities, files, and personnel to the municipality. The termination of an urban renewal agency shall not affect any outstanding legal actions, contracts, or obligations of the agency, and the municipality shall be substituted for the agency, and for the purpose of those legal actions, contracts, or obligations shall be considered a continuation of the urban renewal agency and not a new entity. No urban renewal agency shall be terminated under this section unless all indebtedness to which a portion of tax is irrevocably pledged for payment under ORS 457-420 to 457-460 is fully paid. Your next question probably plays into this a little bit more. Of the $2.9 million we currently accumulate per year, what amount would remain under Oregon City control, and what amount would be claimed by other jurisdictions, county, metro, etc., if we were to close the district? If the district were closed, the city would currently receive $4.409 per thousand of assessed value through property taxes, which would be approximately $730,000. The remainder would be distributed by the Clackamas County Tax Assessor to the appropriate jurisdictions at the current permanent rate that is applicable.
And for the benefit of the audience, both at home and here, I wanted to know the financial implications of closing that district. What money would you forego? Who would lay claim to that money? What money would remain for the use of Oregon City? So there's so much information that flies about when we start discussing urban renewal that I think an educated public and educated commission is helpful to all of us. So I want people to realize we would forego all but $730,000.
Questions, Rainer?
So I asked additional questions, and I guess we can just move on with question number.
I want to clarify something first.
Please do.
Going back, oh shoot, I just went, oh no, there we go. Just changed the size of it.
Just asking.
If you go back to the, to termination of urban renewal agency says, if the governing body of municipality. Now, here's the question. The urban renewal agency is a municipality in and of itself, correct?
It is a separate entity under state law.
So in this context, are we talking termination of the urban, if the governing body, is that us as the urban renewal agency, or is it the city as the city commission?
Well, let me check on that. I believe it's a city commission, but I want to confirm that before,
Well, the Urban Renewal Agency is not a municipality.
Yes, it's a municipal government, just like Any other municipal
It's a
government?
separate entity. Municipality has certain connotations that, that urban
what
renewal
I-
agency may not.
That's what my thinking was, is that it means certain things, it doesn't necessarily apply. I mean,
Yeah.
municipalities and counties generally have urban renewal agents, but the counties also maybe not be defined as, they have a different definition of what they are.
Yeah, and for purposes of this discussion, I think the important thing is that the urban renewal agency is a separate entity than the city of Oregon
The
City.
city, it's a separate entity.
But I think that the commission, because like the 10th Amendment to the urban renewal plan was approved by the city commission.
Yeah, and so let me read to you ORS 457-075. If the governing body of a municipality that has an urban renewal agency under ORS 457-035 finds there's no longer need for an urban renewal agency in the municipality, that entity can terminate it. So
All right,
the
that answers
city
my question.
commission can terminate the urban renewal agency. And I would assume under different statutes that the urban renewal agency could terminate it as well.
My experience has been in the city of Portland, any of the amendments that were made to the urban renewal plans were approved by the PDC Urban Renewal Commission. Then they were subsequently ratified and approved by the city of Portland, because part of the urban renewal plans were a portion thereof were included as appendices to the city's comprehensive plan, because one had to be in compliance, the urban renewal plan had to be in compliance with the city's comprehensive plan. So it was always a two-step process whenever an amendment or a new agency, a new district was created, had to go through the urban renewal agency, then to the city commission.
That's correct. So the
Or the city
urban
council.
renewal agency formulates a plan, but the city governing body then has to.
Or the county governing body, yeah. has to do
Whatever
it.
the-
Yeah,
yeah.
whatever the governing body is, has to approve it, yes, that's the law.
So-
Quick question. Do we have any personnel that are 100% funded by urban renewal? This transfer of personnel, if it were to close, that would go to city, I assume this personnel would go to City of Oregon City. I mean, there aren't any personnel associated with urban renewal.
Correct.
Well, I would amend the question, fully or partially funded.
Well, partially funded would,
There is.
there are certain staff that are partially funded, yes.
And they
The
are
impact would be
because,
that our budget would have to absorb.
Yes.
Correct. Sorry, your question was the partial employees, the city commission budget would need to absorb?
Yes.
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 And Commissioner O'Donnell, I think I missed your question.
my question was fully or partially funded, and if they're partially funded, why, is that because some of their duties entail?
My time right now,
Economic
Yes,
development is
certainly.
funded
Right.
half by
Okay,
urban renewal.
I just want to be clear on
yeah,
that.
so there were a couple of positions that contribute time
Certainly,
managing the district that were partially funded from the district.
understood.
And under the current situation of where we're at in our indebtedness, at what point would our indebtedness be fully paid based on our current payment plan or however we're doing that?
Projected revenues and current state.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair O'Donnell.
Is that a correct question?
Commissioner Smith. I think that's a good question. Is that if
If we were to close it out with a zero
we were to
balance,
close out and apply TIF specifically to pay down the debt only, is that your question? At what point? 2022.
So under this clause, based on Oregon Revised Statute, as long as, if we decided that we wanted to close the Urban Renewal Agency, it could not be closed probably at least until 2022
2
because
years,
of that,
correct.
until we resolved all of its current debt, correct? Outstanding debt, yeah. Okay.
so
I just want to be clear, you
Yeah,
know,
you
that
can't-
what
you
the
can't close
options
it.
are.
No, that's a good question.
And that it would still remain an entity.
Yes.
right, it's a good
Chair,
question with,
Commissioners, If I could elaborate, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I do want to point out that under that statute, if the city commission decides to terminate the urban renewal agency, the city commission can be substituted for the urban renewal agency as the debtor. So the entity could be closed out, but the debt would not be, the city would take on that debt and continue to replay it.
Yeah, I
but,
wouldn't-
but that wouldn't be a good way to proceed, would it? Because then we would forego all but $730,000. We would want to keep the thing intact until such time as we zero balanced it.
Yeah.
that, you know, I'm not talking about the financial improvements, but just a simple question of whether the entity has to stay in effect. You know, the city commission could assume all those debts
Right.
and terminate the agency before they're all paid off.
Because I think why Wyatt's have, it's like, we can't afford this, go ahead.
No, thank you very much, Chair and Commissioner. So I think that was really well explained, Chair. So, and that speaks to why we, even if we did nothing with urban renewal funds and the commission said, don't pay any bills, don't do anything, we would still want to have a budget so that we could levy the taxes that would bring in the tax increment financing of approximately $2.9 million. In that case, if we continue to do that by 2022, we could use that $2.9 million to keep paying down that debt. We would finish off by 2022. As the city attorney said, if we were to close down the district prior to that, no longer have budgets, no longer give to the tax assessor requests to bring in those tax increment monies, then the city would be able to use the existing, any cash that's left over in the pot now to pay off the debt, but we wouldn't be able to continue to bring in that tax increment financing. We'd be limited to the city's portion.
Thank you, Mr. Barnum. So among the other questions I asked, not only the doing away with the district, but if we chose to expand it or contract it, how would that impact going forward? And you answered that question.
Yeah,
Question number 4.
Right, there was some, in the Oregon revised statutes, limits the amount of acreage and assessed value that may be under the jurisdiction of an urban agency for cities with a population less than 50,000, the limit is 25%. 25% maximum acreage and assessed value includes both the proposed urban renewal area and all other areas in the city already under an urban renewal plan. So we just have the one.
What percentage do we have now?
I would have to go back and do the math. It was much less than, give me a second, I can go back, 'cause I know we had it in the presentation, in 2013.
And it would be the same, so
Right.
I'm assuming it's like 15%, maybe?
Oh,
Less than that?
I think it's less than
Less
that.
than that?
What are we, 31 square
I would have to
miles or
redo
something?
the assessed
Well,
value number is
Just
a
based on
little off.
2013.
Yeah,
that would be fine.
we can find what we have
Okay.
there. Any substantial change made in the urban renewal plan before being carried out shall be approved and recorded in the same manner as the original. An expansion of the district may not exceed more than 20% of the total land of the original plan. Any substantial amendment to the existing plan will require that the district comply with the requirements of current legislative changes that have been made, including revenue sharing requirements and potentially a new frozen base. So this one, we do need, if this is something we need more clarity on, we do need to do some additional research to fully address this question and the implications of a substantial amendment to the district. So the current 10th edition was adopted in 2007. New legislation was passed that affects urban renewal agencies in 2009 that deal with revenue sharing requirements. And so we would have to kind of, if we were going to make a substantial change, we would want to, I would bring some help in to help us work through what
Experts in the
those
field.
implications are, both financially, revenue sharing wise, and potentially impacting the base that we currently have frozen in place in the district.
Understood.
Let's see.
Oh, I apologize, this isn't Dowell's.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Anything further?
Not on that one.
Okay,
I can
well-
find this real quick.
So I will state that we now get into the discussion questions. And the question that I posed, and I would amend it, because I said, is the commission interested? The question really is the commission and the community, the citizenry, interested in forging an urban renewal plan that could be supported by the community? And if so, if there's interest in doing that, what form would that take? And that's a discussion that involves not only this group here, but the citizenry at a point in time. And I'm not sure how to proceed on that other than to say, I personally feel that urban renewal is a good tool if properly used. I understand the way it's been used in the past. I still think it has a place. I don't want to forego all but $730,000 of the monies we generate. I struggle with all the misinformation about the impact on schools and protective services. I just think it's an educational duty to the community. I would like to see a partnership and maybe potentially even a panel, including those who have opposed it in the past, that say we could live with it in this format. And that may not be, and the answer might be we can't live with it in any format, but I'd like to have the discussion regardless.
If I could just
Mayor?
jump in real quick.
You got the information.
So in 2003, or I'm sorry, when we adopted the 10th Amendment,
2010?
when was that? It was 2008. November 2nd, 2007.
Okay.
The land area of Oregon City is approximately 6,015 acres. The downtown rural area consists of approximately 658 acres, or 10% of the total land area.
658?
Acres out of a total of 6,015.
The mayor would like to make a comment.
So I want to make a couple comments. One, as we're talking about this, having a discussion with the public, I have to go back to the original ballot measure for section 59, and that was sort of, it was actually a very good, a very good campaign as far as the way the proponents ran that campaign, and it was mostly about your right to vote. It really didn't talk about urban renewal and what urban renewal did. It was really couched in the form of you should be able to vote on everything. And, you know, we live in a representative republic, not a democracy. And, you know, folks elect folks like us to make those decisions so they don't have to sit through hours and hours of complicated stuff. And urban renewal is by far, to the layman, the most complicated possible thing that you could do. It took me over a year of being on the city commission to fully understand urban renewal and how it worked. And as far as section 59, we've already gotten a certain ruling on 59E, and it is in all likelihood going to make section 59 invalid as well, because the arguments are the same, that you cannot control the urban renewal agency by a city charter amendment. So I just want to put those two things out there at the
Okay.
beginning of the discussion.
Mr. O'Donnell, may
Yes,
I
please.
add on to your comments?
Yes, please do.
So I want to go on the record again that I will say that I support urban renewal as a tool for cities and counties to basically facilitate economic development. And I'm not going to make any judgments about whether it's been used poorly or well. I think that my opinion is, based on my experience as a former city staff person and as a community member, that we could be doing so much more with urban renewal. But again, that depends on who sits up here in these chairs and what sort of risks they want to take. I think that urban renewal is valuable. I feel very confident that we can work with the community to craft information that will be easily understandable, and hopefully people will want to listen. While I know some of my colleagues don't support more process, one of the things that we did when I was working for Portland's Urban Renewal Agency is we had an Urban Renewal Advisory Committee, which was made up of stakeholders in those particular districts, and we had people at large. And everything that we did, we ran by these folks. And again, the commission didn't always take all the recommendations, but we vetted a lot of things that were going to happen with the various districts. And Portland had 13. Two
13
less now
members?
because they were closed. 2 of them were closed by request. But I think that we have an obligation to our community to use all the tools at our disposal to help make this community better. And urban renewal is one of the last best tools that is out there that jurisdictions can use to eliminate blight. And again, we can determine what we feel blight is. We can determine as a community what we think needs to happen here and there and make recommendations to the agency, who then in turn will make recommendations to the commission. So that is kind of where I stand on it. I do not want to see it closed down. I did not support closing down the Hilltop one. And I don't support closing down the last best one that we have, because I think over the time that I've lived in Oregon City, I have seen urban renewal as a tool to help turn around our downtown, and Lord knows I have been waiting a long time for that to happen. So that is my statement, and I am willing to work very hard and diligently to reach out to the community members based on the knowledge that I have of 17 years working in 3 urban renewal districts, plus the 2 that I worked in while I worked at the City of Oregon City, to benefit our community.
Thank you, Commissioner McGriff. Is there any other commissioners or board members that want to comment further?
I do. So I believe there has to be some sort of community conversation about it, and I don't know how that happens. I don't even know what the outcome of that would be, because maybe the outcome of it would be any of these scenarios. But I feel like definitely we've used urban renewal appropriately, and in some ways have not used it very well in Oregon City in the past, which is one of the reasons I was so vocal about it early on, because of buildings like this, for instance, which was a complete waste of money.
I agree.
And so we have made huge mistakes, and well, I won't say I've tried not to be a part of it, and I will continue to try not to be a part of it in the future. The struggle that I'm having is with the legal issues that are still on the table, knowing that that could go on for a while. How do we have that conversation and try to move forward fixing it? And what I mean by fixing it is, can we have a dialogue with the community in where we get to a place that the community can support urban renewal in whatever way that is, limited, or it goes to the vote every time we have a project, or whatever. Is that something that we really can do? And what reactions happen, or what happens if in either outcome at the end of the appeals? I think maybe the mayor's right legally, but to me that doesn't really matter. To me, what matters, either way, if we're right or if the city is right on that legal argument or not, we as a city commission are supposed to be doing what the voters want us to do and what this community wants us to do. And if we're not doing that, this response that we're legally right to do it is not enough. And so can we have a conversation about fixing it, especially in the next couple of years when we have massive potential in this city? Definitely there's no piece of urban renewal that's part of the mill sites, except for that one little teeny piece. But if we want to see any development on the river site, or even, other sites without the support of the public, I don't see those happening. And, so we have this back and forth debate over development and non-development. I definitely want to see some of these projects in Oregon City move forward, but I want them at a high level, and I want them to be something we can be proud of 20 or 30 years from now, and I want it to be something that the community supports. And if we don't fix urban renewal in a way that the community supports it, then I don't see any of these projects happening in a successful way. And so to me, this stance of we have the legal right to do it, so we're going to do it, is not enough to get the community to support us in any projects. And if we want to keep battling this for the next 5 or 10 years and see where we are in Oregon City 10 years from now with all these empty lots still and nothing to come and show for it, I think is a huge mistake. And so why we didn't, I will say, I don't know why the last commission didn't fix this, didn't have that conversation, and instead decided that the better route was to waste a bunch of money and fight it out in the courts. It's crazy.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Any further comments from other commissioners or members of the panel?
Yes. Well, I agree with, most of what, Commissioner Smith and, McGriff has said. I definitely think we need to have a conversation with the community. I'm interested in knowing, for the people that voted no or voted against it, what was their reason? And was it because they thought the projects that were picked were bad projects? Was it that they just don't trust government and spending money? Is it because miseducation, they don't understand the program, or they feel like it's a detriment to police or our school? You know, like, it's really hard to know from one vote what, where the community is sitting on this issue. And so I fully support, some community engagement. I'm not sure how we want to go about that and what resources we have to actually do that. I think that may be a challenge. And I totally support Commissioner McGriff's recommendation of having an advisory committee. And what that looks like, I'm not sure. But having a good, equitable, and wide representation of where we can run project. I mean, that could be something on the table as part of the revision of what the new urban renewal would look like. You know, that there's a review board. The challenge is most of our advisory committees also come under some scrutiny as well as to whether or not, there's always contention around those as well. So I just think that we need to think and probably work with the city as far as what resources we would have if we were to do this community engagement that I think most of us want to do before we make any like hard and fast decisions. Like, can we come to something that we think that the community would agree on? The second big thing is obviously timing, whether or not we start this now, assuming we have resources. Do we start this now, or do we wait until the Court of Appeals decision is made? And I think that's probably one of the more pivotal conversations that needs to happen.
And what vehicle would we use to accomplish our goal?
Yeah.
Again, so the question becomes exactly that. How do we accomplish that?
Yeah.
And, one of the ways you could accomplish that would be to have an advisory vote. The danger of the advisory vote is that, and once again, it is shown by the number of people in the audience here today, that A, the majority of people in Oregon City have no clue what urban renewal is or how it works, and B, have primarily not a bunch of interest in it because they've elected us to do that job, because they have lives and jobs and families and daycare and all the other things that they do. And, if we look at, we won the Great American Main Street Award last year. First city in Oregon to win that award. And we would not have won that award without the use of urban renewal. Commissioner Smith is in a building that was a recipient of urban renewal storefront grants. And I would say it's likely that without that, you wouldn't have the space that you're in.
It was blighted.
So my point is I don't think there's anybody on this board right now, and I can speak for, or at least I understand Mike Mitchell's point, and that is I don't think there's anybody on this board who wants to close the urban renewal district at this point in time. So I agree that we need to have a more robust conversation, and we probably need to have a work session to talk about how we might do that. I would be opposed to having another advisory committee because in reality, what we do in urban renewal generally doesn't take a whole bunch of time and effort as far as, looking at projects, because we get the project, we see what it is, we make a decision, and then it all just kind of rolls into the operations side or the administration side. I think that the folks that are here, including the 5 city commissioners, and we have 2 citizen members on the urban renewal commission, I understand why the city of Portland might have one with 13 urban renewal districts and, probably 40 or 50 square miles of urban renewal district. That's a completely different thing, and you might want to have more citizen oversight. But I kind of consider us as the oversight for this board. board. So I would make a motion that we continue to operate the downtown North End urban renewal plan with the caveat that we get together and find out a way to help better inform or gain some more knowledge from the citizens at large.
I agree with much of what you said, and unfortunately about citizen involvement, and I wish it were greater, but it's not. The way we have to operate it currently under the restrictions is like treading water. We go nowhere. I'd like to, I'm going to deviate from the next items on here because we don't need a definition of blighted areas. We'll be wasting everybody's time with the lengthy definitions of those.
Point of order, the chair. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
So, restate your motion.
That we continue to operate the downtown North End urban renewal plan as provided in the documents, and that we, with the caveat that we find some way to communicate with the citizens of Oregon City and try to determine what their will is as far as the renewal is concerned.
I second.
I'd like more discussion.
Commissioner Smith.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Smith?
discussion. Would you like, you have discussion?
Yes. What I meant by creating an urban renewal advisory committee was not to provide oversight, it provides advice. And depending on which district we had in Portland, some of them met more often than others. The newest one that we created was, and I say we, it's just when you work for somebody, I still say we for Oregon City too. The Lentz district had some very specific requirements that they wanted for their district that the other districts don't have. So each of the districts' advisory committees operated a little differently, but they did not have oversight. They were, what do you think about this project? Or a member would say, well, we think that blah, blah, blah needs to happen on this property. What can we do to help facilitate redevelopment? Those are the kind of things that they brought up. And again, they have, good models for how these urban renewal advisory committees operate, and we can also set additional parameters. I think it is very critical for us, regardless of what happens with the legal issues, that we begin the conversation as soon as we can. And I think I would be correct in saying, and I will look to our city attorney, but I believe that the way they operate is that the advisory committees, all the functions and funds to operate those committees came out of the urban renewal districts themselves that they were directly applied to. So the city of Portland itself did not provide funding, general funding for the urban renewal activities. And an advisory committee is an activity of that particular district, and that's where the funding came from. So it would not be something that we'd be having to take from column A. And I hope I'm not giving you a heart attack over there, but that would be, again, my recommendation that we proceed with looking at options for how we can facilitate more involvement. We may need to hire a professional citizen involvement firm that has experience in urban renewal, that we can craft some sort of a plan, and then we start talking to people. We go to them. We don't make them come here and talk to us. We go out and talk to them, meet them where they are. And maybe that's, at their daycare, I don't know, but it's a complicated subject. I have confidence that with clear information that we can help our citizenry understand. Yes, we are here to help make decisions, but I don't want to rub anything in anybody's face, and I want to make sure that we do as much as we possibly can to do this. And if it turns out that we don't, then we say that we tried. We got this information, and I think that's what you want. You want a conversation. We need to have a conversation.
Additional discussion on the motion? Commissioner Smith?
So my issue is, if we continue, as the motion was stated, that implies that we're continuing to spend money. And if we do this public process, we're spending money. The voters told us not to. Period. Now, we can debate whether they have the legal right to do that or not, but that's what they told us. And so, when we say, well, there's not any citizen involvement, there was. They voted, and they told us not to do this, right? So, that's where I'm coming from. I agree that it's a state thing, and I agree with all that legal issue. That's not an issue to me when the voters say, this is what we want you to do, okay? Now, we can fight it, and we will fight it, I'm sure, right? But as a city commissioner, I'm not supporting it. I'm not supporting it until we fix it. And I will go.
What do you mean, fix it?
Well, until we know what the outcome of this case is, or until we fix it in another way. What that means is we have this conversation with the community, but if we can't fund that through urban renewal, and and we really think as a city commission, you know, the city commission can shut the district down, right? Well, maybe this is a conversation we have to have at the city commission level, because if the city commission really feels that urban renewal is important to fix, and it's the city commission gonna move forward on it, then that's a question of whether that's in the goals to do that, whether or not we're funding it. But right now, I voted no on the budget. Why? Because of exactly what the voters told us. And if we're gonna move forward with a public process, or move forward even saying this district's gonna continue forward, it means continuing to do that. And so what happens if the lawsuit doesn't win, or it does? We still have to go back and fix it all. You know, if the commission if a city commission really feels like this is a thing that is something we really care about, then maybe it's a priority in the city budget, and that's how we fix it, and we do the public process through that and not urban renewal, because we have to show some credibility to say we're listening to the voters in some way. Because if we don't, they're gonna fight us, or some of the people are gonna fight us all the way. And how do we build consensus? How do we move forward in projects that we as a city feel are important if we continue to say, screw the voters, because we're legally right? So which is why I will not support the urban renewal budget. I will vote no on the city budget because of this issue. And I will vote no on this motion until we have a way to actually deal with the problem, or we wait till 2 years until the court tells us what to do.
So,
But I don't think we should wait 2 years. I mean, honestly.
well, I agree with you there. I don't think we should wait 2 years. I think it's clear that there is no large opposition in Oregon City to the Urban Renewal Agency or the plan. I think what happened in that vote was they had a very skillful campaign to not talk about urban renewal in itself, but to talk about, well, we should have the right to vote. And the fact is if somebody brought an initiative petition to legalize slavery in Oregon City, it could pass, but it would still be illegal. It still would not be constitutional, either under the state constitution or the federal constitution. And what they did
And we
here-
would fix it.
What they did here is the same thing. They brought an illegal argument to the table, to the voters, and got it passed by a slim margin. But fundamentally, it was an illegal argument from the beginning.
And unfortunately, the response from the commission was, screw you, we're gonna fight it, instead of having a conversation at that point, which is what should have happened in this town.
Wait a moment. We're getting,
I don't think so.
Stop for a
because the
moment.
argument-
Stop, Commissioner.
Gotta go forward.
We're revisiting the past. We all understand the past. It doesn't serve us well to debate it. The question is, what do we want to do from this point forward? And the discussion that I'm hearing is, we hope that we can engage a community, including those who are most opposed to it in its current form, to hopefully forge a vehicle, an urban renewal vehicle, that is palatable, effective, does what we want, and doesn't offend. And in that vein, that's why I asked for this meeting. I feel exactly how my fellow commissioners do. Win or lose, I'm not one to say, hey, we won, we're going to do whatever we want. That's not our role as commissioners. Our role is to work with the people. So the invitation would be, and to those present, and if there's anybody here, I know it's a work session, but we've amended the rules. If anybody wants to speak, give an opinion.
It's not a work session.
It's a regular meeting.
It's a regular meeting, excuse me. If anybody wants to come forward and speak, they're invited, as well. Hey,
I have one more comment.
do you want to do it now?
Yeah, because
Okay,
my
please do.
comment is,
We have a,
Well, we can vote on that motion. Do you want
Well,
to call for the vote? or
I'm,
you want-
I'm willing to hear a public comment before we do that. I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Ms. Wilhite.
Amy Wilhite, citizen of Oregon City. I can't speak for the writers of the initiative, but I can tell you that everybody that I talked to, including myself, that voted for that had nothing to do with we wanted the vote, right to vote on everything. It had to do with we didn't feel the money was being spent on the right projects and in the right way. So
Okay,
I respectfully disagree with your statement.
thank you.
And
Commissioner
so
Smith,
my,
you want to
my
continue?
comment in response to yours, Commissioner O'Donnell, is that you can't say that this commission agrees on moving forward without telling the voters, we don't care what you think, if we're moving forward. Because moving forward means spending any money to do it. So you can't say that. I mean, if this motion passes tonight, it's saying we support moving forward just like we have, and we still support spending the money, even though the voters told us not to.
We have additional public comment.
Yeah, after the public comment for this next person, I'd like to briefly have a discussion with our city manager about your statement.
Yeah, I have a question for him as well, so.
Well, we have multiple questions. We have additional public comment. Let's take the public comment.
Are you talking to me?
If you're,
Sorry.
you move to the front row with your paper in your hands.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. A couple of things
You are.
that I understand.
Name,
Oh, Betty Mum, Oregon City. Thank you, I'm here for comic relief. A couple of things that I understand is there is nobody up here, not even staff, that are saying, we don't care what you think, citizens. We all care about our citizens. I sat up there with some of you, and I said we have to put on our urban renewal hat, not our city commission hat, and we have to be urban renewal commissioners. Totally different. It's run through the state. It's a total different program, total bit different budget. I went to when people were running for election this last year. I went to the it was Rivercrest Park neighborhood meeting. At that meeting, the school district person, Wes, and I can't think of his last name right now.
Rogers.
Okay, Wes Rogers said, when the question was asked, what impact does urban renewal do to schools? He said absolutely nothing. There is no impact to schools. If you close that district tomorrow, it does not mean that the city of Oregon City is going to get any more money. The money goes into the general fund at the state level, and it is divvied out through them. They can take the money from urban renewal and put it towards any program they want to. It is not earmarked to Oregon City School District, okay? So if you're going to do an advisory vote, my recommendation would be you do an advisory vote on a project. Don't put an advisory vote on, do you want to have an urban renewal district? You have to narrow the field for people to understand. City of Canby put forth an advisory vote to the citizens, said, do you want to use urban renewal funds for the library, the new library? The citizens said, yes, I get that. I can understand that. They don't get urban renewal has a district. What does that mean? You guys got to narrow the field if you're going to go out for a specific advisory committee. And I do think urban renewal is very hard. I got 30 seconds. It's very hard
Continue
for
on.
people to understand. And I know people are on both sides of this issue, but I just want you to know that even with the advisory vote in Canby that was taken and approved by citizens, to this day, I still hear from citizens, what a waste of money that was. You guys are not going to please everybody. And that's just the bottom line, and I'm sorry.
Did they
But
say that the library was a waste of money?
yes. I still hear it.
Yeah, I don't support an advisory vote at this point.
Nor do I.
I'm just saying. But my time's done. Comic relief is over. Oh, shoot.
So before the next person goes, I do want to say that the downtown urban renewal district was formed by a vote of the people. So the two votes are kind of a dichotomy because the citizens voted to put the urban renewal district in, and now, although illegally, have said that we can't spend any money.
But they
Noted.
voted for the district before we started spending the money on stupid things.
I can't affect what other commissions have
I
done.
know.
Conversation
exactly.
ended. Sir,
Bob Mahoney, Oregon City. Each one of you, when you ran for office, were very aggressive in your conviction as to what this city ought to be, how it ought to run. I don't see that same conviction as you're talking amongst yourself. I see a lot of paralysis by analysis. And this is just a characteristic of organized government. Somebody has to lead. And you people were elected to lead. So please, lead. I don't give a rip if you're right or wrong. Just lead. You know, really. Just lead. For God's sakes, that's what the public wants you to do, is to stand up and stand for something. Now, if you don't like urban renewal, say it. But don't beat around the bush. Just recommend to the city commission that you support urban renewal. Let the city commission under their jurisdiction and authority, and that's what it's about, isn't authority. When you've got the authority, then exercise it. You just don't have time not to. It's going to kill you if you don't. So, I support urban renewal. I don't understand it. I trust you guys with your common sense and good judgment to exercise that when the applications come before you. I stand behind the law of the state of Oregon and our charter. So, for goodness sakes, do something, please.
I don't think I was wishy-washy, Bob.
Commissioner Smith,
Nor do I.
nor do I.
And so exactly my point is that my recommendation was that this is a conversation that should happen at city commission. And we are the elected, the city commission's the electeds that can decide whether or not this is a priority, which is why I think this discussion should have happened right after the election before. And I've said this from day one, should have happened during the goals retreat, should have happened during the budget cycle, should have happened. But here we are, end of May, having the first conversation about it. It's really was done poorly. If we would have, as a city commission through our goals process, said that and had an urban renewal meeting maybe at that point or some sort of work session to say, how are we going to respond as a new commission to the legal issues and to the future of urban renewal, we could have had that conversation and we could have, maybe had some, direction at that point. So, now we're already through the budget process. And to say that it's two different budgets, you're exactly right, but we're spending money out of the city budget for urban renewal. So, so now here we are, and, I think if the city commission really feels that urban renewal is worth saving and moving forward with, then that is the group that needs to move forward with the public, because that's the body that was elected by the people. And if they think that it's worth fixing, then it's going to be fixed with city money, not urban renewal money. And then we can move forward with that process. And then if we decide that we get to a place where we want to move forward with urban renewal, then maybe we put urban renewal commission on hold. And maybe we have a dialogue with the public on how to fix it. And when we feel comfortable, then we move forward. But I think we have to do it fast, because I don't think we can wait. We're in such a holding pattern right now with economic development, with projects getting started. I mean, can we really afford to wait for 2 years in legal battles to figure this out? I think we can't.
So noted, and I agree with much of what was said, and I think what I will say is better late than never. Let's do it now. I know we didn't do it before. I can't undo the past. We can't undo the past, but we can try to do what we can do from this point forward.
We'll see how you vote.
Commissioner Chair O'Donnell, I do feel that it's the responsibility of the Urban Renewal Agency to begin this process and make their recommendations to the city commission. But it's essentially, it's an urban renewal issue, which of course the city commission is ultimately responsible, but it's an agency issue. I think that's where we need to get started. I do not want to go back and repeat the past. Yeah, maybe the projects were stupid, but I don't want to keep beating the dead horse. The horse is dead. We're here now. I think we have agreement to move forward. We have capable staff to help us do that. So let's move forward. I think we need to create a different motion. We either need to vote on this motion and vote it down and come back with a motion that supports what we're talking about, that we support urban renewal. However, we want to do this process. The other question I would have.
That's the motion.
Well,
It wasn't that clear.
yeah. So anyway, the other thing I want to ask Tony is, could you absolutely double check, because I think spending money on a citizen process, I guess I would say I would support spending money out of the Urban Renewal Agency because we have the money. I know you disagree, but if we can use that funds to promote what we're trying to achieve, to me, that is better, rather than compromising something else in the city budget.
Further
That's where I want
comments?
to go, and I don't want to hear any more about what we shoulda, coulda, dida. We're doing it now.
So to be clear,
Are you restating your motion?
you have to walk a very fine line when you're talking about the city promoting something as far as, you know, maybe moving up to a vote or some other kind of thing. You know, we have to be very careful that all we do is put out information.
That's right.
And and the information cannot be biased one way or the other. So the question becomes, if you're going to do something like that, what does it look like? What does it cost? You know, there's a lot of different questions. I think the motion is, I think the motion said that. We move forward with urban renewal, and we, at the same time, we establish a public dialogue, some kind of way to get a sense of where the city's at as far as the voters are concerned.
And I agree with that. I don't know where the money's coming from.
I don't know what move forward means.
And if the money's coming from urban renewal, my vote is no.
Well, let's be clear, okay? So since the vote, urban renewal has still been in effect. You know, we paused some things and spent that money out of the city budget. That's why we had the balance transfer this year, was because we had spent this money in urban renewal, and we had to reimburse the urban renewal agency because technically we weren't supposed to under this section
The
59.
reverse.
Or maybe,
Yeah,
the
the
reverse.
reverse.
I'll just say, when you use the word "we," I'm not included in that.
Well, that's not the point. The
Regardless.
point is
It's
the
my
agency.
point.
You're still a part of the league.
Continue on there.
So we will have to spend that money somehow to support the half of the economic development person. That budget's there. Part of Tony's salary is in there. There are a couple of the staff people that are, you know, that urban renewal pays a piece of that money for. And the decision that was made by the commission was that since the Section 59E had been determined to be invalid, the likelihood it was that Section 59 would also be held invalid because it in effect does the same thing. So we made those balance transfers. So we can spend, I mean, if we're talking about some kind of a public engagement process, I can't imagine spending more than $100,000 to do that. And that's not a ton of money in the scheme of urban renewal.
Could you, see, what I'm having trouble with the motion is I don't know what moving forward is. I think
Exactly.
I think we're saying that we want to keep the district as it is, but moving forward to me would mean we're going to create projects, we're going to do other things, and I don't think that's what we're saying. I think we're saying that we don't want to discontinue the district, but we want to keep the district as it is in its current form, but we want to move forward with a citizen engagement process to better come to an understanding about what our constituents feel about this, help them understand what it is. And I think the Urban Renewal Agency can say, well, this is why we think it's important. The City Commission has a different role. They can't promote stuff, but I think the Urban Renewal Agency, and I just looked quickly again at this slideshow that was put, it shows all the good things that it does. There are some bad things, but not as many bad things. I mean, this city has never done a condemnation, and, you know, we've never approached property acquisition that way. We have the authority to do it, and I would say if push came to shove, I would support a condemnation, but that, we haven't gotten there yet. I've done one in my career, and it was really interesting and kind of exciting, but we never got there. So it's semantics. Again, I don't know what forward means.
Well, I think let's clarify what forward, we're operating the commission, the Urban Renewal Commission under certain restraints right now.
Can I clarify?
If you would, please do.
We continue to operate, my motion is that we continue to operate the Downtown North End Urban Renewal Agency as it sits right now, and have that agency move into a public process to try to establish what the citizens of Oregon City want.
Or what they don't want and what we'd like to tell them.
Either way, okay.
So are we forwarding this recommendation to the city commission for their concurrence?
Well, we have an amended motion on the floor. I think,
I don't think
No.
it needs to go to it's not going to the city commission.
I mean, let's be clear.
I think
The city commission is here.
Well, I agree, but we're operating as the Urban Renewal Agency, and I think it would just be a matter of semantics to have the city commission, when we meet as a city commission, to support the Urban Renewal Agency in its efforts to do citizen outreach.
I don't think there's any argument. I think that would be unanimous by our sitting city commission.
Amendment to his revised motion.
Oh, maybe.
I still,
How it's written.
I
Right.
still second the revised motion.
Discussion. I just want to clarify that if I agree to this motion, I am not agreeing to any new projects. So I think that's what Commissioner McGriff was trying to get to, that, you know, I'm willing to go and move on this community engagement and.
How is that not a new project?
We're talking about economic development.
Well,
projects.
at this point, I'm not convinced of what we're spending $100,000 on. There's nothing on the I mean, I'm not even
Well,
sure
no,
where that number
I
is.
just
Yeah.
pulled it out.
Yeah,
of thin
so
air.
like,
I mean,
I'm not,
Well, I think the key,
my question was gonna be, you know, like, what does this community engagement actually look like? What are the resources? We have no idea. And I'm not sure, truthfully, if we were to go down that road, for me, at this point in time, I'm not sure what metric we would want to hit or need to hit in which areas that we would say, okay, we feel comfortable.
That's the next step.
And I know that's the next step, but that's gonna be a really challenging one,
Yeah.
I think, to come up with.
I think we're up to the challenge. I think we're up to the challenge of figuring out what that is and making it happen.
So I don't believe this would be a urban renewal project. I'm not in agreement of investing in any buildings or any land or anything that's not currently on our plate that we're having to maintain. But I do think we should at least have the discussion to try to support our community. I do not want to move forward with new projects without that discussion happening and likely some revision to the process, the project review process. Just have an open conversation, maybe as projects over a certain amount do go to a vote. You know, so.
those would be the details. I think we're stumbling over how to finance anything that we devise the next plan. So
The details are the second part.
I do too. So I think what we have a motion on the floor. If the motion is, and as it was clarified,
Yes.
in a second, then the motion as clarified was continue operating the agency under the current restraints, which is servicing existing debt, taking on no new projects. Is that a correct explanation of the motion? Restate it.
Currently, we're operating under the idea that urban renewal is legal. And we have a circuit court judgment that says that, and it has not been stayed.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when you say no money other than retiring debt, there still is all that staff time and other things that go into what happens in the urban renewal agency over a year's time. And that can be unwound should we, should we have to go forward. But I don't want to say that we're only going to use urban renewal money to service debt.
And service operational needs of the urban renewal
Right,
agency.
right.
Administration.
Administration.
Administrative costs.
So there it is amended for the umpteenth time.
I'm ready to vote.
I call a question.
Just so you know, there's 3 other citizen comments that have
understand.
come in since.
So do we want to hear the citizen
I think
comment
we
before we
should.
vote?
Please,
All right.
next.
John,
Withdraw the
or I'm
motion.
sorry,
No,
next
I
is
don't wanna
William
withdraw
Gifford
it.
and John Williams.
We have to explain it again.
Oh, yes, we are.
It's burned in my mind.
I think you're right.
Mr. Gifford.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, my name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. Thanks for the discussion of all of this. I did have 4 points that I wanted to touch on. One is, good luck. Trying to educate the public on how a complicated device such as urban renewal actually works is going to be pushing water uphill for one thing. And if, by the slimmest, most optimistic perspectives, that you could educate the majority of voters on how this device works, my suspicion is you would have an even harder challenge of trying to get them to care about it. Because, as has been stated, most people have lives. This room is not filled with people that give a hoot about urban renewal. So yeah, you might be able to educate them, but if they don't care, the only way that they will vote is through fear, that they're losing one of their essential rights. Number 2 is, what you have in front of you is a dilemma. And the dilemma is that you, by some respects, can't spend money, and you can't not spend money. And you can't have it both ways. And yet, that's why you guys make the big bucks. You have to figure some way of doing both of those, not spending money and spending money, because they both have to be done. Number 3 is, the argument has been put forward that citizens vote and the citizens' voice say to do this and do that. And I would say the citizens vote on issues, and they also vote on their representation. And for the argument to be made that, well, this was the will of the people, well, I would say the will of the people also put you all in the seats that you're in, and that if the people don't agree with what the decisions that you're making, you won't be there next time around. So,
I know I won't be.
promise?
I'm term limited.
Yeah, whose fault was that?
Next point.
The last point was, I hardly agree with Commissioner McGriff's comment about don't waste any time on the would've, could've, should've attitude. The past really is the past,
Agreed.
and you folks have a dilemma to solve, so get on with it.
Thank you. Next speaker. We're all getting slower, John.
My name is,
Just disregard him. I do.
my name is John Williams. I live on Sunny Lane in Oregon City. I'd like to plug that on the street. As probably the principal opponent and representing maybe the voice of those who were changing the city charter, we would be happy to cooperate in a conversation with whoever to make some additional points. And there are ways to achieve, there is a way to achieve what you've all been talking about here in restructuring. And without getting into the whole election debate again, I think it can be done, and without a great deal of expense, if we simply manage to follow the instructions of the state and the intention of the legislators, when they passed all of the parts of the urban renewal situation 75 years ago, was it? In the 60s, 1960s? I think it can be done without all that's going on here tonight. I don't think any of it's wrong, but I don't think you're on course, if you want to put it that way, and we'd like to help you get there. Thank you.
Well, those are encouraging words, and you would be a welcome participant if you would choose to do so.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Public comment?
Bob Mahoney?
Bob Mahoney is double dipping?
No.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
for the question again.
Bob Mahoney, did you have a comment?
Oh, that was.
Oh, okay.
So we have a motion
And a second,
and a second.
call a question at this point.
Do you have it written down, Rachel?
I do not.
I think maybe you should,
I would be going from
perhaps it should be
memory.
restated at this late point in time.
Listen to the tape.
Well, I just want to make sure everybody's.
Let's
Yeah, you
make
can
sure
go
what we're
back-
voting on.
You can go back and look at the video and get the motion, the last motion I made. And that's-
Right, but the point was that the people who are voting right now, do they understand what the motion is on the floor?
I think we should restate it, and I know what the motion was. Do you want to restate it,
Why
Mayor?
don't you restate it?
The motion, as I understood it, is we continue to operate the Urban Renewal Commission to both service existing debt and to take care of administrative expenses and nothing further, and move and gather the group we wanted to look at a revision that could be acceptable to the general public.
I'm good with that.
Call for the vote.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Steve Van Haverbeek,
Aye.
Commissioner Dan Holliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lyles Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Abstain?
Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell, may I say for the record
Yes.
that I have faith in our public, and I look forward to engaging with them in further conversation.
As do I.
So we're moving on?
Well,
Yep.
almost. If I can just clarify. So we'll go back, look at the tape. I believe I understand what the objective here is, that we're going to put together some type of a public participation plan. I am not taking this to the city commission. This is a decision that's been made at the Urban Renewal Commission. I fully intend to come back to the Urban Renewal Commission with a public engagement plan so that we can have that discussion. And when we talk about paying administrative costs, you know, Bill and I have been looking through the definitions, you know, public participation is specifically called out in creating an implementing a urban renewal plan. So Denise, getting to your question just off the cuff here, it does seem like money can be spent on a public participation plan to implement an urban renewal plan or create one. Do we have to have a discussion about where the funds are coming from to implement this plan? Is that something?
I don't
that you
think
want?
so.
Okay, so
It's clear it's
you
coming-
consider that part of administration?
Yeah, and it's coming from the UR agency, and if by some stroke of horrible luck, we are, you know, beaten at the appeals court, we can unwrap those administrative costs, correct?
Okay, does that sound acceptable to everybody
It does to
at
me.
this point?
And
Do you have any timeline estimate?
Well,
of when
obviously,
you think-
urgency is of importance to the commission. Our next meeting is in a week. I won't be able to
Oh,
get this
well.
by then.
No.
You know, I'll try and see if I can at least get an outline of options for the second meeting in June so that we can begin to have those discussions. I realize we have a budget meeting that night as well, so it might not have time, but that is my intent to at least, you know, try to get something started, realizing I've got about, 13 days to try to put something together. So I will do what I can to get that moving.
May I have permission to engage with you further on how we roll this out, since I have in the past staffed 3 urban renewal advisory committees and still I have some options for getting some information to you.
I don't know the problem. Does anybody in the commission have a problem with that?
I do not.
Thank you. I would be willing to give my time to
Great,
assist.
appreciate it.
Sounds good. I mean, I'm not trying to rush you. I just always think it's good for us to have some expectation, and let's be clear about when this topic is gonna come back up. We've been critical of the timeline of things coming back to the city commission, so I just want that to kind of be daylighted and make sure that we're staying on task.
Yeah, I do worry, like I said.
So if
we
you
have-
need more time, I guess what I'm saying is.
Well, the problem is we have a I think July 3rd. I'm not sure if we're having a meeting the day before the 4th of July, then all of a sudden I'm into the second meeting in July. Meeting, unless we call a special meeting, if you want to give me the ability to do that, and try to put something together and spend some time on it.
We've been doing this long. I'm not sure that trying to rush staff to get something out the door, I'd rather they take their time and get it right than, and, you know, again, we're coming into the summer season, people are gonna be gone. You know, I don't have any problem with it bringing us something back, you know, the 1st of August or the first or second meeting in August, give you time to, you know, work that out. I mean, the wheels of government are grinding exceedingly slow everywhere, so it's, you know.
Well,
I
okay,
think
how about,
we
how
have-
about
better than most.
Commissioner McGriff and I have a chance to sit down. We can provide you with an update of where we're at in the process, have a
I
better
think we have
idea of
aspirational goals,
what we're
but
taking off.
This
But-
is going to take time, and I agree with Dan that we do not want to rush this. We want to move deliberately, to move forward, but we want to move with purpose.
Oh, I totally agree, but I think it's in, the city manager's best interest to provide cushion,
Yes.
and not set, a goal that we would be, wanting to hold you to that may be
It's
really
unrealistic.
aggressive or unattainable. I want to be reasonable. So if it's July-ish, early August, sounds great. I just wanted to kind of have that.
So here's my question, and it can be kicked out. Do we want to start the discussion with a small group that does not violate public meeting law, maybe yourself, 2 commissioners, maybe Mr. Williams, to get us pointed in a direction that we think could be workable?
I'd rather give staff the opportunity to put that together first.
I think we can have.
Working with Commissioner McGriff if they want to do that.
Wouldn't it be the same?
Let's have a discussion about what staff brings back to us, what that looks like, how the public engagement is going to go on.
I think we can I think, you know, what I would recommend to Tony is rather than getting into really super detail at this point, it's high level bullet points about point A, point B, point C. We can flesh that out later, but I think a basic outline is where we really need to go with some points that can be discussed further. I'm not willing to get into the weeds. We're not ready to get to the weeds, but we need the broader topics
Okay,
of what to look at.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
that sounds fine by me. Everybody else in agreement? Okay, I think that closes our discussion on that.
Okay.
We have item 5B, Cove Disposition and Development Agreement, update and discussion, staff report.
Thank you, Chair O'Donnell and Commissioners. So the Urban Renewal Commission has requested a presentation and discussion of the Cove project and the Disposition and Development Agreement. Many of you are well aware of the location of the Cove project, where it's located, the blighted nature of the property. It's within the flood zone, adjacent to an old quarry area that is known as the Cove, with a connection out to the Clackamas River. Development of the site will require substantial engineered fill, infrastructure, and other site improvements to bring it up to a development standard. The proposed project with Hudson Holding will consist of 8 buildings that will include multifamily and mixed-use buildings, as well as site improvements, public amenities, and habitat improvements. The developer will be constructing a new Agnes Avenue and all necessary public and private utilities, an esplanade along the waterfront, trailhead parking, and significant shoreline habitat improvements. The project will stimulate the local economy by adding a number of immediate construction jobs, enhancing the mix of uses in the area, and adding new residential units to Oregon City. The development agreement identifies the scope of the project, preconditions that must be met prior to construction, developer loan commitment requirements, property acquisition timelines, and necessary reversionary clauses to the benefit of the Urban Renewal Commission. Public investments to mitigate the substantial costs of correcting the site. Defects will include a financial investment of $695,000 for work products that consist of reimbursement for the Phase 2 environmental assessment, design and engineering costs for the infrastructure, and city land use application engineering fees. Such contributions will not occur unless reimbursable items are completed within 350 days of the effective date of the agreement. The DDA was approved by the Urban Renewal Commission on November 26, 2018. The agreement outlines the project preconditions, project construction, land use approval, public investment, environmental and dredging areas, property acquisition, default, and general provisions. Section 3.2 of the DDA on page 4 outlines the preconditions that must be met. The Urban Renewal Commission approved preconditions 3.2.1, which is the development plans, 3.2.2, the land use application, and 3.2.6, the general earthwork plan at the November 26, 2018 Urban Renewal Agency meeting. The Urban Renewal Commission approved the restoration easement in terms of the restoration agreement as identified in section 8.2 of the development agreement at the December 19, 2018 Urban Renewal Agency meeting. The purchase and sale agreement of Lot 1 and Tract A, which were sold to the Cove LLC, was approved by the Urban Renewal Commission consistent with section 10 of the DDA at the February 6, 2019 Urban Renewal Agency meeting. Staff continues to work with the Cove LLC to fulfill the remaining preconditions as identified in the DDA.
Discussion?
There's a public comment.
Public comment?
Chair
William
O'Donnell, I just had asked Tony where we are in the timeline of that,
Mr. Conkle?
those days.
Yeah.
So it's been approximately 6 months.
Okay.
So it was approved on November 26th, May
Okay.
29th. So I'd have to do that.
So
I don't know the exact numerical.
Are they in breach in any way?
No, they are not.
Okay. That would be my biggest concern.
Mr. Gifford?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. One of my areas of involvement is on the Water Environmental Services Advisory Committee, WES. And it's come to my attention that WES has been given, I don't know if the word is responsibility, but they have to take care of Agnes Avenue now. Not exactly sure how that happened. I thought that was a county road, but since WES is sort of a county agency, they've wound up with that responsibility. And tonight, I hadn't heard before that the developer is going to be responsible for improving Agnes. And I'm wondering,
We're not improving. We're building a new Agnes.
building a new Agnes, that's what I wanted to hear. Is that going to be in the same location as the
No.
old Agnes?
It will not.
Any?
Old Agnes is actually an easement over West property.
Yeah.
So it's always been under county control via the easement on their property. It's not a typical right-of-way that you would see. So Agnes will be constructed at a new location as a public right-of-way.
Any idea what's going to happen to the old Agnes?
None.
Where is that gonna be, Tony? Because obviously the old Agnes is built on some
Right.
landfill.
So it'd be,
I walk it every week, you know.
We call it the Dippity-Doo Road in our house.
Yeah.
so it would be on the property line of the Urban Renewal District property. So it'd be moving west on the other side of the old building, the old warehouse buildings that are there.
Okay,
Old Agnes is between those old buildings and 205. It's going to go on the other side, the west
okay.
side of those buildings along the property
And it
line.
will not continue on to west.
And you're saying the west side, not the west side?
The west directional
WEST.
side. It will be connected via emergency access to Agnes Avenue that's currently stubbed at the south end of the Water Environmental Services facility. That will also serve as a bike ped connection, and then, like I said, emergency access.
So the Agnes that Mr. Gifford is talking about is the stuff that belongs, it's still Agnes Avenue in front of their facilities.
Correct, and the portion of the road that continues south along 205 that's been closed down because of the failure of the facility.
Right.
I'm just curious if it's going to be renamed or
There's
how will it show on city maps? Just
There's historical precedent for that name as to why it's Agnes Avenue.
so the new Agnes is going to be also Agnes Avenue?
Why wouldn't it be?
So we'll have two Agneses. Okay.
It's still Agnes Avenue, whether it's here or there.
That sounds
I
like
hope
it's gonna
that's
be
the hardest part of this project.
Okay, now.
Okay, moving right along.
So I'm not sure why, beyond giving an update to the new commissioners, I'm not sure why we're having this discussion. The disposition development agreement is signed. That's a contractual obligation that this Urban Renewal Commission has made. I don't see any likelihood of us trying to submit ourselves to another huge lawsuit, should we try to terminate the DDA? Is there something somebody else needs to know? I guess that's my question.
I think
It was
part
just
of, I think
informational,
part of
wasn't
it was, we have multiple new commissioners. This project's been around
Right.
for a long time. The DDA's been signed.
There's no action required, it's informational.
I was asked to bring it forward for, to answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you.
Any concerns?
My only concern is that we make sure to, make sure that the applicant is towing the line and doing what they're supposed to do. We have a lot riding on this, and, I just want to see that it's done as we want it to be done and specify that, and this contract is a contractual obligation. I take the DDA very seriously, and I'm not really excited about people coming in or breaching it or saying, or making excuses about why they can't do something or another. You signed on the dotted line, do it, folks. That's our expectation. That's my expectation with a DDA. And I know you're holding them to it, so I feel comfortable right now.
Any other questions? Moving to item 5C, the minutes of the
Let me
January.
just make a motion here, Frank. I move to approve the minutes of 1/16/2019 and 2/6/2019.
Second.
Call the vote.
How do you get from there to there?
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Could you just pass on me for a minute? I just lost why we went from talking about the DDA to directly to the minutes, so.
Because that was what was next.
Commissioner Steve Van Haverbeek,
Yay.
Commissioner Dan Holliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
I'll vote aye.
And Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Aye. I'm waiting for the items to come up. So we have future agenda items. Anyone?
I think we have one already.
Yes, we do. Other than that, is there
Yeah.
anything further?
I think that's enough.
Hearing none. City managers report.
Just provide an update that, we have released the tourist coordinator, job description application. So we were gonna move forward with getting that filled. So we'll have that open and, advertising that. I think that went out, late last week. Been doing some work with human resources in trying to address how we want to move forward with the economic development manager position. So we did a study of similar positions throughout the region of jurisdictions of similar size, and some not. And several economic development manager positions, as well as economic development director position, to see where our salary range ranked. It's a little on the low end. It's not way out of the ballpark. So I think we'll be coming back to the city commission to have a discussion about how to move forward with that position. When we look at it, it's one step below, an assistant finance director, assistant parks director. There isn't an in-between step. You go from that economic development manager up to that next step. And so, I think the discussions that we're having is, is it really gonna change who would apply? Or does it warrant moving it up that 5% in step and re-advertising? Or, is there a different method to go out advertising? Should we bring in outside help? Potentially a consulting firm to help advertise, bring in recruits. So we're working on that right now. So just to give you an update of where we're at and how we're trying to move forward in filling that position.
That's really a city commission discussion.
That's what I was saying, is that
Yeah,
it
okay.
would bring back this to the city commission, but obviously the economic development manager position had a big role in the urban renewal commission and the work that they did as
Yes,
well.
that-
So it was more just being able to provide an update of where we're at.
Well, I guess I have a little concern about hiring what would be the assistant for all intents and purposes for this position prior to hiring the ED manager. And I know you've got to timing issue you can't deal with, but
Yeah, ideally,
I
I
agree.
would have liked to have been able, but I just worry that just with the timing of putting together an application, getting it out, getting it filled, getting it, I'd hate to lose the tourism is important, and we made a lot of progress, and we need to start moving that, and at some point, we need to go, and I decided that
Okay.
I can't miss another 8-9 months in
Could you
waiting for this.
Explain just a little bit, because I'm not super familiar with this job title, exactly what that is.
The tourism coordinator.
I think I know what it is, but I don't want to be
Sure.
presumptuous and
So-
assume.
So several months ago, the commission adopted the Oregon City Tourism Strategy. And as part of that were a couple of options for how to staff that, utilizing the transient room tax
Tax, right.
as a way to fund either a full-time position, a part-time position, a consultant. The commission decided to move forward with funding a full-time position for a tourism coordinator to help implement the tourism strategy that was adopted by the city. And so I was waiting to fill that until we had an economic development manager
Right.
hired so that that person would be supervising that person. But without being unsuccessful in this first round, I just felt it was time to move. on
So
the-
this was all those meetings that I attended over the last few years, where
Right,
we were putting
correct.
dots
Just
on
to start
everything. and, yeah,
implementing.
The plan, okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm
Just
with you
the-
now.
the-
I just
yeah.
didn't, the job title was just a little bit unfamiliar. I thought, no, wait a minute, is that what we talked about in the tourism plan, development plan that we were talking about? I don't know if this is, well, you tell me if this is an appropriate question. If it isn't, then you don't have to answer. So are you at liberty to say why your chosen candidate, did the denial or the, I don't want to take this job have anything to do with the salary?
It was a very cordial, just not the right time. So.
Because if it was, then, I think there's one way you go, and if it wasn't, but maybe split the difference.
Well, I think that, coming from the Gresham Urban Renewal District, obviously Gresham is much bigger than us.
Absolutely.
But just being involved in the urban renewal component is what Ms. Bauer was, her current job is. And to be honest, what she was making there was step 9 of what we offer as a manager position here. So, but coming from a bigger jurisdiction
Right,
to a small,
right.
I mean,
Yeah. Well,
but
maybe-
having more duties versus just running a district,
Right,
I mean,
right.
so it's kind of in this weird little spot of how do you stay competitive in the region?
Maybe split the difference.
Anything
really a
further?
discussion that needs to be had at the city commission level, not there.
Okay.
Anything further, Mr.
I'm just
Conkle?
asking a question,
That's all that I have
since
tonight.
this is a staff.
Anyone have anything for the good of the order?
No.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.